from the island of Cuba. As all immigrants to a new country or exiles, as we were, there's a longing that you grow up for the country that you left. And in that longing, I began to search as a young man. I was still maybe 12, 13 years old, and began to listen to a lot of the music from my culture, which I was always enamored with. And I went to a record store in Southwest A Street called Do Re Mi, which still exists. And there was this album that said, Jam Sessions in Miniature, Descargas en Miniatura. And I saw this guy, holding the bass like if it was a guitar. And this group of musicians it seemed like they were having a great time. I said, a jam session. So I said to Rolando, what about this record? What's this? He says, well, that's a classic. You should get that. And I said, he knew I was starting to practice the drums and, was fascinated with the conga drum. And he says, yeah, you should buy that. So I took this record home and I put it on, and that record transformed my life.
Every tradition in music, to break that, is always a problem, A lot of people really may resistant to that. But only a great musician like Cachao could do such a thing. A guy who really say, yeah, I know the tradition is like this, but let's experiment a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and let's try this. And that start to enhance the music, to make the music more attractive.
I can't think of anybody that would have contributed more than Cachao. I mean, there's many contributors, but especially in the genre of how Cuban music has been integrated in world music and how it's had its influence. Once you recognize that, and then you figure out, well, who are the people who are doing that? Cachao is at the forefront of that.
Even Tito Puente, the king of the mambo, he's called in New York, El Rey del Timbal, and another icon in our music. But Tito's another person who's several generations ahead of us, but also inspired by Cachao.
I think that we would be a less rich musical country if we were not to really embrace and applaud and enjoy the music that Cachao has contributed to the world, and most definitely to America.
It's like seeing Billie Holiday and Louis Armstrong and the players from a bygone era, and having them here still playing well, still clear, and to be able to bring that excitement that they brought to the audiences and to the dancers so many years ago, and to still experience that today is something that's very special. Every time you're around the gentleman, you're going to feel that excitement.
Without further ado, our spiritual leader, the Father of the Mambo, the father of the modern descarga, the man who brought the rhythm session, as John Santos so eloquently put it last night, to the forefront of our music, not as a background instrument, but as a predominant instrument. The man who revolutionized Cuban music and effective music really all around the world twice over, and is still doing it today at the age of at least 86 if he admits to it. Please welcome our spiritual leader, Israel Lopez Cachao.
grew up in the house where Jose Marti was born, so there's magic in that house for sure. He comes from a family that has this incredible musicianship, a pedigree of musicians, of classically trained musicians, going back several generations, going back actually to the 19th century. And he's got dozens of relatives, grandparents, great-grandparents, parents, nephews, nieces, who are great classical pianists and bass players in particular, but just all-around musicians.
Déjame preguntarte una pregunta. Empezaste como un niño tocando música.
En el 26, 1926. Empecé como percusionista, bongocero. Al año era trompetista y cerecero. Y después cogí el bajo. En el 27 ya estaba tocando el bajo. Y entonces hice del 27 al 30, hice cine silente. No había música, no había sonido. Y entonces hicimos 3 años con el maestro Ignacio Villa, que cariñosamente le decíamos la nieve a él. Pero anteriormente comencé con el sexteto de Pascual Fa, padre de Roberto Fa, famoso director de conjunto Cachao. Éramos todos muchachos. Yo tenía 8 años, Roberto Fa tenía 14. Era el mayor de todos nosotros. Los muchachos 7, 8 años, 9 años. Imagínate. Aquello era una creche infantil.
¿Qué te importa que te ame si tú no me quieres ya? El amor que ya ha pasado no se debe recordar.
He grew up with people like in the 20s and 30s and 40s with María Teresa Vera, el Septeto Nacional de Ignacio Piñeiro, Abelardo Barroso, Benny Moré, Rolando La Serie, Bebo Valdez, and his brother Orestes Lopez, which they would know, his nickname was Macho, who was a genius, like Cachao. They composed most of the music together, and I would say he was probably, Cachao's greatest influence and greatest collaborator,
Bueno, siempre fue la música. De niño, como la familia mía, eminentemente musical todo el mundo, pues eso era el hobby mío principal. En mi casa se tocaba música todo el día, todo el tiempo. Nada más que el tiempo de dormir era que no se hacía nada. Pero después, cuando todo el mundo estaba alegre, de nuevo a tocar música. Eso era todo el día. La familia musical, todo el mundo. Mi madre tocaba un instrumento, mi padre el otro, mi hermana el otro, mi hermano el otro, y yo el otro. Así hacíamos una orquesta. Nosotros nada más que sabemos de música. Todo música. Nada, ni clavaron ni siquiera un clavo. No. Yo nunca fui ni carpintero, ni nada, ni mecánico. Yo no servía para nada de eso. Siempre la música solo. Se iba a los bailes y no se cobraba. Los músicos no cobraban.
No cobraban.
Sí, porque no estaban dedicados a eso. Después que vino la unión ya se organizó y eso. Los músicos generalmente no eran músicos solos. La música la tenían por hobby. A ver, si
Bueno, Ignacio Piñero era albañil.
Albañil. Entonces los músicos eran sastres.
Documental de él.
¿Cómo no?
Increíble.
Sastres, barberos.
Y de noche salía a tocar y a escribir.
Cualquier cosa, porque la música no vivía. No. Después vino la unión de músicos, entonces se establecieron las tarifas.
¿Qué año fue la unión?
En el año 33. Yo tengo un carnet, la foto que tengo con bigote, en ese año. Pero no vinimos a cobrar hasta el año 33. Pues entendido que fue cuando vino la unión. Uno llegaba a un baile y el programa era de 34 piezas. ¿Tú sabes lo que hacían los músicos? 34 piezas en la noche es mucho. Y tú cuando terminaban, 4 de la mañana, las 34 piezas, y siempre decían, ¿dónde van ustedes con un machete? No, ¿qué? Va. Cuando el sol asoma el cholito, la cabeza, por aquella goma, entonces ustedes se van a las 9 de la mañana. Había que aguantarlo.
Yayo, chayagara, coyerica, mañongo, iro,
And the bongo players, especially in the 20s, when Cachao was a young person playing bongos, the bongo players epitomized the African element coming into the popular music. There are a lot of recordings that exist still of that era. That was a special era, and you hear this African complexity in the rhythms, and that's Cachao's root. And he never left that. He brings that African sensibility into everything that he does.
Vi un documental una vez, y estoy hablando del año 36 del África. Habían 20 individuos tocando y ninguno tocaba igual, el ritmo. Y hacía un impacto, una cosa así, increíble. Y dice, ¿cómo puede ser? Ahí había clave de guaguacó, de todas clases de clave, y de todos los ritmos, todas las cosas. ¿Y esto qué?
Y también es una cosa de posesión. Estos son los ritmos de nosotros.
Sí, el tren. Tú vas en un tren y coges y tú te sales del vagón y párate entre los trenes para que tú veas lo que hace la línea. El tren va y entonces la junta produce una serie de golpes que es puro ñáñigo.
When he was 10 years old, he said that he debuted with the Havana Philharmonic, standing on a wooden box. And so he has this classical training that he comes from, and played with great composers and conductors from Europe that would come to Havana in the 20s and 30s and 40s.
Si habla de compositores, uno de los preferidos míos es Beethoven. Hice mucha música de Beethoven. Toda la sinfonía de Beethoven la toqué yo. Toda. Desde la primera hasta la novena. Y de Mozart, de Tchaikovsky, de todos esos grandes compositores. Yo tuve 30 años en la orquesta. Imagínese usted, la experiencia que adquirí fue increíble.
The knowledge he got of music was a lot more, you know, open to a lot of different things and melodies and changes and chord. And the information he got through the classical music also gave him a lot more ideas of how to mix those things, how to create those fusion.
Danzón is a very elaborate, almost like a minuet in the way that it's danced. It was danced almost choreographically. People that danced it knew what they were doing. There was the language of the fan that the women used when they were dancing danzón. It's got some very specific steps that are done, and it's very formal, and it was considered like very high class and had a lot of etiquette that went along with it. So it was funny because he brought these really cool African rhythms to this music and created this that kind of became like the waltz of Cuba.
As a young man, he became a member of a lot of the most popular orchestras, predominantly the Arcaño y sus Maravillas.
Bueno, yo hice 1500 y mi hermano 2500 porque nos pusimos de acuerdo y producíamos danzones hasta 28 danzones en la semana. 14 él y 14 yo, así. Fue mucho. Un récord se puede decir que es. Ahora que yo me di cuenta, pues yo todos los días escribí. Y un día estoy escribiendo y yo fumaba cuando caí. Pongo el cigarro aquí. Bueno, estoy escribiendo. Y una de las veces, cojo el lápiz, me lo pongo en la boca y el cigarro me lo puse aquí. Y me quemé. A ver si me entiende el cuento ese.
His memory is just as sharp as anything. He remembers. It's such a joy to have the privilege to speak to him, to listen, because he remembers from the 30s. You know, he remembers, names and places and dates, and he tells a complete story. So it's just mesmerizing to listen to him. And he's a piper. Well, an audience of one is enough for him to start telling his stories. And sometimes we're on the, because we're on the go. We have 18-hour days when we're doing the European tours and all that. They're long days. And he's not a young guy. So, but he's right there. He don't nap during the day. He's up in the morning. We're busy all day doing sound checks and doing the gigs and traveling. And he doesn't take any naps during the day. But once in a while, when we're traveling in the car, he's telling a story. And he would say, "Tu sabes, Bonilla, that in the early 40s in Cuba, when I was," and then he goes, right? And then the car will hit a bump. He goes, boom, and he goes, "When I was in the Tropicana," and he picks up the story from where he left off. I said, what? This guy's incredible. Oh my goodness. How did he meet Estelle? From the neighborhood. She was, he would pass by, they'd be sitting out, she'd be sitting out on the porch with her family, he would be passing by and they would see her, he would speak to her. And don't forget, that's the era of when everybody was chaperone. You had to have permission to even speak or to walk with the person, and the chaperone would go along. So that was the period.
Lo que más me gusta, lo que más siempre me gustó de la relación de ellos fue el respeto enorme que había entre ellos. Él, músico, ella, esposa de un músico, ella aconsejaba al esposo y al músico, pero no intervenía en su carrera. O sea, que lo que él decidiera, ella, si no estaba de acuerdo, le podía dar una sugerencia, le podía decir, mira, Cachao, esto, Pero yo lo que más me gustó y lo que más me enseñó a mí para mi propia vida futura fue que yo nunca en mi casa oí una discusión entre ellos. ¿Cómo se siente crecer con Cachao? Fantástico, fantástico. Yo siempre digo lo mismo, que yo me levanto dándole gracias y me acuesto dándole gracias a Dios por el Padre que me ha dado.
In the end of the 30s, Cachao and his brother Orestes Lopez came up with this piece, Mambo, that was called, entitled Mambo. And it had these elements. It was a little bit more up-tempo, which they changed very quickly in response to the dancers' response to that.
The pattern was similar to things they had been experimenting with in their danzones, but a little, at a faster syncopation.
Everybody plays short ostinato patterns, repeating patterns that are short, 2 or 4 bar phrases usually, and they just repeat. So you get this weave of rhythm. They're all playing fairly simple rhythms, but they're put together in a very ingenious way that creates a weave of rhythm that is irresistible.
So it's very precise. It's very right with the beat. Some people say on top of the beat. I hate that. That's for me, it's not correct to say on top of the beat. No, you have to play with the beat, not on top, with, together. Because in music, when you're playing in 4/4, 4 is in the way down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. But it's not on top, it's with. Boom, ba ba da ba 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 ba, boom, beepity ba bitty bitty bitty, boom. That kind of concept of a strong rhythm is what the people who dancing, they want to be sure whoever's playing that thing, they got that strong concept of rhythm.
In 1938, experimenting with the syncopation of the Cuban danzón, Orestes Lopez's brother, Israel Cachao, added an additional part to the Cuban danzón, and it was called the Nuevo Ritmo. And in that Nuevo Ritmo, that first danzón was entitled Danzón Mambo. But that danzón laid the foundations for the mambo craze that swept the world later on with Pérez Prado in the 50s. Here we take the original Danzón Mambo and put it to Cachao's orchestra with a horn section, and you're here where the mambo was born. Mambo!
aquella época era más lenta la cuestión de la promoción, que muchas cosas se quedaban en Cuba, no salían de allí. Entonces, por eso es que hay que agradecerle a Damaso Pérez Prado, que fue que internacionalizó el mambo en el mundo. Y eso se lo agradecemos nosotros mucho. Para la gente pensaba en ese momento que éramos rivales, no, al contrario. Él hizo una cosa muy grande, internacionalizó el mambo. Aunque sea a mí y de mi hermana, pero él lo internacionalizó. Hay que darle sus méritos también a él. Que eso es lo que no entiende mucha gente de eso.
I think the mambo, I mean, was one of the first Cuban rhythms that really exploded worldwide. You could hear it anywhere, and it was in American movies, and everyone was trying to dance it. People were taking dance lessons to learn how to do the mambo. It was considered very sexy. Of course, all the very fast-moving saxophones. It was exciting music. It was explosive, and Pérez Prado, of course, made it very popular internationally, but it was definitely created by Cachao.
Era una fiebre que había con eso. ¡Oh! Increíble, todo el mundo bailaba eso. La gente no pensaba nada más que en bailar. Una época, de luego, ¿no? Una época de tranquilidad y entonces todo el mundo se ocupaba más de divertirse que de otra cosa. No había tanta violencia.
La tradición del danzón todavía vive debido a ciertas cosas que Cachao y otros músicos han hecho durante muchos años, que es dejar que haya ciertas improvisaciones y ciertas variedades dentro de esa música. Eso ha dejado de que, por ejemplo, siga siendo el danzón, pero que se convirtió en mambo, se convirtió en cha-cha-cha. Hay danzones hoy en día que son hasta de música de jazz, convertida en danzón, melodías jazzísticas convertidas en danzón. Y hay improvisaciones donde ha permitido que esta música se siga desenvolviendo hasta los días de hoy.
Mambo was so popular here in New York, and then jazz players from the United States, Dizzy Gillespie, Charlie Parker, Zoot Sims, Dexter Gordon, all great soloists of the 1950s. We could call that the bebop era, the era of bebop, where the jazz took on a completely different direction, more harmonic and rhythmic and melodic variations from the standard jazz of the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. But in the 50s is where we started to get this combination of jazz and Afro-Cuban. And one of the first terms that they used was, since it was Cuban and it was bebop, then we have the term Q-bop. Q-bop. And that term was used for quite a while. Then they just went into another term called mambo jazz. And that was used for a while. But in the last 20 or 25 years, the term that is used now, it seems to be the standard term, is Latin jazz.
¿De dónde viene Oye Cómo Va? Dilo tú, Rey, porque van a pensar que yo estoy loco.
Primero oí chanchullo de eso como el 58, en un disco Gema de esos de 78.
Que tenía esos acordes. Tan, 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 tan,
ese movimiento.
tan, tan, tan,
De ahí que viene el rap ese.
tan, tan.
Hubo una discusión una vez de Transporte Santana. Porque dice Transporte que Santana se lo había robado. En definitiva, cuando supieron que el movimiento era mío, usted no va a hacer demanda, y yo demanda, ¿no? ¿Qué es eso?
A mí me pasó una cosa muy curiosa, porque el Oye Cómo Va viene de chanchullo, que viene de la raíz, fíjate, que es de Cachao, o sea, el sello del número, no de la letra, porque la letra es el coro, pero el sello es de Cachao. Y entonces, por supuesto, Tito cogió ese vamp y lo convirtió en un número. Y entonces Carlos Santana lo grabó y lo hizo hasta más famoso. Pero nadie nunca sabe, a Cachao nunca le dan crédito por el número. Por lo menos mitad del crédito, ¿no?
Carlos es
Pero el primero que salió en ese...
Pero lo interesante para mí, como observante, estuvimos una vez grabando, tocando en los Grammy. A mí me invitaron a tocar y Cachao me invitaron a tocar para abrir los Latin Grammys tocando Oyo Como Va. Y estaba cantando Ricky Martin el número. Y invitaron a Carlos Santana para que tocara también. Y entonces estamos en los ensayos, en el soundcheck, y están tocando el número. Y parece que el arreglista de Ricky Martin fue el que se hizo cargo del grupo. Y estaba inclusive hasta Arturo Sandoval tocando con nosotros. Y empezaron unas discusiones que no, si no el arreglo no es así, que así no se toca, que si eso no es el tono, y como tomando posesión de cómo se... Y Carlos se apartó. Y como diciendo, entonces Carlos me viene y me dice, Carlos Santana, me viene al lado y dice, todas estas cosas, y tú y yo sabemos que el autor de este número es el que está en el bajo ahí, y Cachao está ahí calladito, nada más que diciendo, deja que ellos que se entiendan ahí más o menos. Y esa es la gran ironía de este tipo de música, de que mucha gente se cogen cosas y lo toman como folclore, y no folclore, son composiciones clásicas, ¿no? O por lo menos composiciones reales que hay que respetar.
You know, I asked him really once, I said, Cachao, I said, you know, Oye Como Va is you know, that's the music part, you know, the hook. It's your chanchullo. And he said, sí. And I said, but, you know, there's been a lot of money exchanging hands over this copyright and this publishing on this song and the royalties. And he says, don't you feel like maybe you should have had at least a portion of that song? Or how do you feel about that? Is it something? And he went, tú sabes cómo son los muchachos. Which means, you know how kids are. That's where he's like, it's almost like he felt like my art is something I give. I don't really need to receive anything back from it. So it's like one of those things where he was just like, just let me play music, it doesn't matter.
He talks about this festival that they used to have in Cuba. The musicians, they would go up into the mountains and have like a festival.
Pero lo que hacíamos era, reuníamos, por ejemplo, unos 30 o 40.
And he said one guy would take a chicken, another a pig, another guy a couple of gallons of rum, and they would just like camp out for like a week or more. And they play non-stop.
Como eran tantos, pues mientras uno comía, el otro tocaba y el otro dormía. La música no paraba nunca.
In the 50s is when he became known as a band leader. And his popularity, of course, as a band leader grew. But his group was like an incubator for the great musicians in Havana at the time. The percussion in Cuban music had always been an accompanying instrument, meant to back up the singers, play rhythm for the dancers to dance to. It was not your job to sit there and take solos or to improvise or to play fancy. No, you play time, and that was your job. But those descargas of Cachao, he did it in a special way, and it was the pinnacle. At that time in '57, when that happened, it was the pinnacle of this idea of the percussionists as virtuosos. Those gentlemen I mentioned, Barretico, Tatawines, they were Picassos on their instruments. They didn't just hold time. They had great sense of time, great sound on their instruments, but they were virtuosos, and Cachao unleashed them.
Cachao was a major influence to most musicians that knew of him, knew of his music, and serious musicians, especially jazz musicians, American ones, wherever they were from, they knew about Cachao. And Cachao, with his improvisations, with his descarga, brought that unique element of improvisation to music. And improvisation is really, comes from the soul. You can be a great technical musician, but a lot of people can't improvise because you're writing on the spot. And I think listening to him do this and seeing the many ways that he would take a theme and then go crazy with it on the bass, give the trumpet, give the piano a space.
Sort of free association jam sessions, incorporating elements of American jazz and Afro-Cuban rhythms, like fusing that and creating these sort of jam sessions or descargas where musicians were able to really, be highlighted,
I think he applied a lot of percussion and a lot of rhythm to the instrument. I never hear anybody doing such a thing. He really create those kind of things. He beat the bass with the bow, and he play on top of the wood of the fan, not on the strings. I'm not talking about the wood, as a percussion instrument. He really created a lot of things, a lot of sounds with the bass, but always in function of the rhythm, to enrich or to enhance the rhythm.
Donde no hay libertad no se puede hacer nada. La poca libertad que hay en Cuba es esa, que no se puede pensar nada. Porque si usted quiere hablar de una cosa que afecta al gobierno, ya no lo puede hacer. Eso es lo que pasa en Cuba hoy, que mucha gente no se da cuenta. Porque una cosa es vivir aquí y otra es vivir allá. Allá usted no puede hablar. Cuando el cubano llega aquí, lo primero que hace es así, mira, ¿puedo hablar? ¿Cómo no? Si está en un país libre, ¿cómo no va a poder hablar? Allá es donde no se puede hacer eso. Allá usted dice, no, porque Fidel, y ya ahí. Todo el mundo está oyendo a ver qué le gustaba decir. Como nada más que diga que no le gusta, se busca un problema. Y eso no es libertad.
Unfortunately, the tragedy of exile is exile. You have to leave the thing you most cherish in your life, which is your country you're born in. And Cuba had gone through a very drastic political transition. Most people like my parents and like Cachao and everyone who supported the revolution and the promise of the revolution, which was to the restoration of the Constitution and democracy and pluralism When that idea was betrayed, people did not want to be part of that, you know, whether it was because for reasons of your own children who were being taken over by the state. All the decisions you have to make as a family, you either have to decide to stay and be, a puppet of that system, or you got to make a move.
Having spoken to Cachao many times, I know that it was tough when he left Cuba and had to come to the United States, as it was for every Cuban that left. You've got to imagine if all of a sudden you're, 50 years old and you've established a whole life, and someone comes and takes away your home, takes away your freedoms, takes away your way of life, and you have to come to a new country that you don't speak the language, where you're starting pretty much from zero. But I've got to tell you that what made Cachao incredibly special was that despite all his difficulties, despite the fact that he was a huge star in Cuba and that he was instrumental in creating new music for the world, he was so humble, and he never lost the love and the joy of making music.
He had been working with the orchestra of Ernesto Duarte in Spain, and he was there for a couple of years when he left Cuba, and then he decided to come to New York.
The revolution separated them. His wife Estelle was vacationing in New York when Castro took power in 1959, so she decided not to go back to Cuba. Cachao was finally reunited with her when he got to New York in 1962, but their daughter still remained behind in Cuba.
Es mi boda de mi comunión. Cuando yo hice la comunión, que fue en la iglesia del Carmen también, donde me bautizaron, y la que está al lado mío era mi amiga de Cuba. Fue en el mismo año que mi papá salió de Cuba. Él no tuvo tiempo de estar conmigo ahí, pero estaban conmigo los dos. Cuando yo hice mi comunión y toda mi época que estuve sin ellos en Cuba, ellos siempre estaban conmigo porque no me faltó el amor, siempre tenía el amor de mi familia, hasta el 66, que gracias a Dios los pude ver. Mi mamá era una persona que era fuerte de carácter. Tenía que hacerlo, hacía. Tanto fue así que ella sacó a 3 familiares de Cuba, ella sola, estando en Nueva York, trabajando sola en Nueva York sin saber el idioma. Trajo a su mamá, a su hija y a su madre. Y cuando mi papá llegó a Nueva York, llegó por el día y ya por la noche mi papá tenía un trabajo en el Bronx Casino en el Nueva York.
It was around 1963. I was playing with Tito Puentes' band in Palladium Ballroom. I see this gentleman walking down in the front of the ballroom, and he gets up on the bandstand, and I say, "That's Cachao, man, oh, yeah." And he played 2 sets with Tito Puentes' band. And immediately all the dancers just stopped dancing and came up to the front of the bandstand to witness Cachao. It was the first time the public had actually seen him performing here in New York City. Cachao stayed in New York and did many recordings. He became a most called for studio player in record sessions.
En Nueva York tuve 9 años, o 10 años. Y de ahí, de los 10 años de Nueva York, pasé para Las Vegas, Nevada. Y después seguí en los demás hoteles, en el NGN, en Egipto, en el Doom. El último hotel que toqué fue en la Hacienda. Bueno, el lugar preferido mío de Las Vegas fue el Caesar Palace, con la orquesta del maestro Pupi Campo. Éramos un grupo pequeño, tocábamos en una balsa que se movía constantemente la balsa. Era un barco. Entonces ahí todo el mundo llegaba y había quien se mareaba. Y ahí se podía comer y todo el mundo comiendo. Y bueno, nosotros tocando también. No crea que era, pero me acostumbré y me sentí muy bien ahí. porque a mí me gustaba el juego. Por eso tuve que irme de La Vega, por el juego. Yo jugaba más que los que iban allí. Oh. En la Nevada tuve 9 años y entonces vine para acá.
His wife finally said, "We got to get out of here because you make $4 and then you blow 6." They moved to Miami in the late 70s, and obviously he went there. There was a cultural connection, and it reminded him probably of Cuba and had relationships there, obviously.
Miami is kind of a very unique city, and for Cubans that are missing Cuba, it's probably the closest thing to home. Unfortunately, though, in Miami, especially at the time that Cachao was here, there wasn't a huge music scene.
Cuando del África llegué, yo traje mis caracoles. Cuando del África llegué, yo traje mis caracoles. Me trajeron los españoles.
I got a recording there in Miami, and I would love to use Cachao to play the bass in that recording. And when we talked, I remember he told me a couple of things. He said, number one, somebody have to come and pick me up. I have no car now at this moment. And also, I need you rent a bass for me because I don't have a bass either. Wow, I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't find out what's this all about. And then I asked Juanito, what's the story? He said, Arturo, he's not doing too well business-wise. He don't doing too well, and that for me was hard, to believe such a musician with that tradition and that reputation for so many years. He was struggling,
One day I was in a restaurant and I saw a guy. I heard some Cuban music that was fantastic, and then they came to the table and he stand up and I stand up and I see him and I give him a hug. I say, "Oh, Cachao, oh my God!" I give him a big hug, and I saw him playing for tips.
Regalaron amiguito pa que luego fuera esclavo.
He was playing bar mitzvahs and whatever. People would call him and do maybe some little session work in Miami, but it wasn't really a lot. And so he was surviving. Basically, and one of the bands he started working with was the Hansel and Raoul Orchestra.
We were working in this place called Merchandise Mart. We had this bass player called California, and one night he sent a sub to sit in for him because he couldn't make the gig. So the one that he chose was Cachao. And when I was sitting at the bar, like most of the time, and I see Cachao walk in, and I go, "Oh my God, this is so nice." Yeah, Cachao came to hear us play, to hear our music, and it turned out that he was the sub. He goes, "No, tonight I'm gonna play with you guys." Actually, his words were, being the great gentleman that he was. And so tonight I'm gonna have the pleasure of playing with you, with your band. So we all freaked out, because everybody knew who Cachao was. He wasn't a household name per se, but all the musicians knew him. We all knew about him.
Regalaron amiguito pa que luego fuera esclavo.
The 80s was wild. The 1980s in Miami was drugs, salsa music, and parties. That's all it was.
Drugs?
Yeah, a lot of drugs. But Cachao was old school. you didn't dare talk anything about drinking or drugs in front of Cachao. I mean, I didn't have the courage to do that. But we all, the band, we used to go to after parties all the time. The clubs open till 11 o'clock in the morning in those days. So we used to finish playing and let's go party. Cachao would never go to those places. He was by the book, old school. He's more than a musician. He's a unique human being. He was all about his family, his wife, the daughter. He didn't have musician-like qualities. And I don't want to insult any musician. I am a musician, but he was a great husband and very punctual, contrary to other musicians. He brought the band together because we all of us, learned from Cachao. He made us all play better, sing better, do everything better, get there on time.
Like the American time, you know?
American.
Because Cuban time, it was 4 o'clock, you say, maybe 10, let me think about it. It's gonna take a little time to go there.
We had some great experience, one of the great experiences ever, you know, to work with Cachao. So in '89, we got the San Francisco Jazz Festival to sponsor a program called La Evolución de la Música Cubana, de la Música Afro-Cubana, the evolution of Afro-Cuban music. And we invited Cachao, Chocolate Armenteros, Walfredo de los Reyes, Armando Peraza, Carlos Santana, and then it was a great success. One of the things that I'm also very thankful for is that Andy met Cachao in 1989 at backstage at Davies Symphony Hall, and then opened up a whole nother aspect, a whole new chapter in Cachao's career and Cachao's life with all the great things that Andy's done for Cachao.
Cachao always accompanied me for really all my life. It was really where I found solace in exile, was in Cachao's music. Subsequently, I was here with Tom Luddy. We were here in San Francisco during the preparations for The Godfather Part 3. And he says, you must stay. Cachao is going to perform Davies Hall with John Santos, the Machete Ensemble, a special guest with Cachao, and also Chocolate was there that night. Then when we got there, it wasn't like Cachao was only doing the descargas. John had him, with Rebecca Moleon, play his danzones. And it was the first time I saw Cachao's danzones performed live. And Tom was sitting next to me. I was mesmerized to hear those mambos played on those violins. That's when I took it upon myself to say, let's do a concert, let's do a documentary. We were at the James All Night Center, and it was a 3,800 seat house. And I would say to people in Miami, I say, what are you doing? I go, I'm doing a concert with Cachao. And they go, who? I said, Cachao, I'm doing a concert for Cachao. And they go, who's Cachao? And I go, you know who's Cachao? Well, this is not good. Well, by the time the concert went on, we had to turn people away. People knew who Cachao was.
No, caballero, esto tengo que decirlo porque lo siento de verdad. Ustedes saben lo que es un muchacho tan joven y con tanta responsabilidad que mantiene nuestras raíces. Es increíble. A él le agradezco.
Once we did the documentary and people got hip to him a little bit, I approached Emilio and he was able to get Sony to give us a budget, and we recorded those first 2 albums.
So I called Cachao, he was very happy, and we get the contract going. Then I get a call from Tommy Mottola from Sony, the chairman of Sony. He said, oh my God, you signed your first act.
And the guy says, you know, Sony said, who's Cachao? He says, oh, he's an extraordinary musician. Oh, he's fantastic. He says, does he sing? And he says, no, he don't. No, he sings, but he's not really. No, he's not really a singer. He says, well, does he dance? And he went, oh, well, I'm sure he dances, but you know, not really. He doesn't really dance.
He's good looking. I said, he's very good looking.
You know, Sony was going, what? Who are you recording here? And Emilio had to say, no, but he is, you know, he is the father of all this music that everybody plays, you know. We won the Grammy for Master Sessions Volume 1. We were nominated for the Grammy for number 2. We are nominated for the Grammy and the Latin Grammy for Cuba Linda. And we won the Grammy and the Latin Grammy, and we're nominated for Best Song for Ahora Sí.
I remember when I brought him to the White House to perform for the president. He told the president he performed for President Roosevelt. He said, you're the only guy who came here 2 times in such a big difference. And he captured everybody. He was so old, and you know, I had to even accompany him to get to the stage. But I was so proud of him.
He's already in the Smithsonian. He's part of, you know, the culture of the history of the great musics of the world, you know.
When Andy has the opportunity, he performs with Cachao. You gotta see how he keeps looking at Cachao. He does not turn his head away from Cachao. You can see that love he has for him in his face. He loves Cachao like a father.
Ya, este es el 4º Grammy que me gano. Y tengo también una estrella en Hollywood. Allá, pues, hace 2 años me la dieron. Está en el piso, en la acera. Y eso me un honor muy grande. Yo he pasado 1000 veces por esa acera. ¿Y qué voy a tener yo idea de que me iba a dar una estrella ahí? Digo, esto es increíble, una sorpresa enorme. Digo, así que voy a pasar por aquí. Y voy a ver el nombre mío aquí, que no lo puedo creer.
I asked him, I says, did you ever dream that something like this, I says, would happen to you? And he goes, never in my wildest dreams. He says, we were just playing because we loved the music and to eat. Winning awards and accolades was not part of my plan. He says, I was just doing what I was meant to do and play the music.
Bueno, la experiencia viene por muchas cosas que han sucedido. Aprendí a hacer lo que yo siempre, mi padre me dijo, cuando yo tenía 4 años. Si usted puede ser presidente de la República si quiere, y mecánico, pelotero, músico, pero tiene que ser, antes que nada, persona. Una persona decente, comprensiva. Ese es el sistema mío, humildad, que es muy difícil. Mantenerse en cierto nivel y que uno esté, eso no es bueno. Que ser amable con la gente, sentir que la gente lo quiere a uno, yo quiero a la gente. Así es como yo me siento bien. Que todo el mundo me admire, me aprecie y me respete y yo respetar a la gente también.
Music came from up there, from God, you know. And when you really feel the music very deep in your soul, you feel like a kind of necessity, like a spiritual necessity, to play, to practice, to create, to share your emotion with the people, you know, and to be involved with the music as much as you can. It's like a necessity.
First of all, he's a leader because he's directing the band, and he's very much a physical presence. He is wonderful to watch besides to listen to, and he's really in control up there, and he's in control with a big smile on his face and just in pure enjoyment. And I think that a lot of that enjoyment that music gave him, he totally transmits to the audience.
For me, having the privilege of being in a studio with him and watching him create these songs in a very spontaneous way and organize the orchestra and start delineating pieces and arranging the arrangement, that within an hour's time, we were running through the breaks, and within an hour and a half time, we had recorded the song.
Había otro patrón cromático. Solamente lo que quieres que haga yo la segunda vez.
Por eso, toda la melodía para que pase con todo el piano.
So it was important for me to show people like sort of like a look, like I called it a look inside the legend, because it was like, watch this man work and how easy, effortless this thing becomes, you know. It's like he's just, art just pours out of him, you know.
Cachao's love story ended May 4th, 2005. He was married 58 years. Estelle Lopez, her real name was Buenaventura. Her friend's family, we call her Estelle. They were together everywhere. And to see them together, beautiful. They would look at each other so lovingly, and they would laugh and enjoy each other's company so much.
Ella lo apoyaba en sus viajes, estaba con él. en sus ensayos estaba con él. Donde tú veías a Cachao, tú sabías que ahí estaba Esther. Donde estaba Esther, tú sabías que estaba Cachao. Ya sea untándole el maquillaje, cargándole, no cargándole, dándole la música, de la maleta de música cuando ensayaban. Yo creo que detrás de un hombre siempre hay una mujer. Y en este caso fue una sola, por 58 años. Que es muy extraño ver eso en un músico hoy en día. Si antes cuando ella estaba viva, la tocaba con gusto. Entonces me imagino que hoy en día no será muy grato ni muy fácil para él tocarlo. Pero yo desde que mi mamá murió, yo siempre le he dicho a él que ella no está con nosotros. No está en el sentido de que no la podemos llamar, aunque a mí se me ha zafado y yo la he llamado. Pero que físicamente, vamos a ponerle así, no está. Pero que ella está. Ella está, y especialmente cuando él está tocando.
¿Y qué te inspira a escribir canciones, a pensar de los temas? ¿Es la vida o algo te inspira o cómo lo haces?
No, es parte de uno, porque uno tiene que tener esa cualidad, porque es muy conveniente, porque es como una terapia. Mientras estamos pensando en alguna melodía o algo de eso, y nos beneficia mucho. Es como si tomáramos una medicina. Para nosotros, que estamos entre los compositores y los músicos. Y cuando tenemos una idea brillante, pues imagínense, nos sentimos con la gloria. Y ese es el motivo por lo que nunca retirarse. Nadie se va a retirar.
I asked him, I says, what kind of advice would you have for the younger musicians of today? And he says, to stick to the tradition. Never get away from the tradition. That's the only thing he wishes for the music. So don't get lost. And he says he really don't have that fear when he sees young people playing the music and seeing the joy in their faces when he plays. It just overwhelms him.
Políticos, artistas, activistas comunitarios, gente de pueblo se han reunido hoy en la iglesia San Michael para rendir tributo al rey del mambo, alguien que dejó de ser cubano para ser del mundo, Israel López Cachao. Al maestro Israel López Cachao se le rinde tributo esta noche. Una despedida como lo hubiera querido. Cientos de cubanos se unieron en oración y aplausos para el gran músico que deja un legado inigualable.
Una misa de difuntos solemne, pero festejando la vida de una leyenda, al estilo que hubiese querido Cachao, recordado entre lágrimas por quien lo llama su padre adoptivo.
Por eso es tan difícil despedirme de él hoy. ¿Qué hacemos con esta pérdida tan monumental?
Cachao iniciaba su último recorrido por las calles de Miami, camino a la necrópolis donde descansa su cuerpo, porque su legado sigue vivo y la leyenda descansa, no muere.
I think that it says a lot that Cachao, every time he saw me, kept congratulating me for the success that we had been able to accomplish worldwide, when I was the one that was in awe of him and that thanked him each time, because he really was very influential in my life, both as a musician, as a human being. And I don't think he realized his impact. And I think that that's the beauty of that. I don't think he cared. I don't think to him it was a big deal that he was a musical star and a genius and whatnot. He never focused on that. He focused on being able to give to people through his music. And that to me will always be something that I felt very fortunate to share with him.
Cachao, the world lost a great human being. Because everybody knows about the music. But the man himself is what makes him so great, you know. Best musician ever. I think he was an even better man.
Cachao was inspiring his peers and every generation after each decade goes by, and that'll continue because of, you know, folks like me who have been influenced by him. Whenever anybody ever asks us about the music, about who to listen to, about who to study, about how to learn, Cachao's the first person we point them to because of the information. It's like a treasure trove of information and history and documentation of rhythms and of styles. And Cachao is just, you know, nobody can really equal his legacy in that respect.
You can put him right next to Louis Armstrong and Dizzy Gillespie and Charles Mingus and Charlie Parker. I mean, that's the lexicon of the names that he's up there with, you know. And then that's and for me to have been associated with him or have contributed a little bit to form an awareness of him that way is someone told me to do that. Someone told me to go into that record shop and dig through that and pull out that LP and say, here, I'm going to give you this gift right here. And so Cachao for me was a gift, you know. And so it was, the best thing to do with a gift that you receive is to share it with other people, you know, give it up in a way. I think that's what he did all his life, was he just gave it up, you know, gave his art to the world and for those two, and that's all he needed to do. He didn't need anything else. How he survived? With his art. One week he had a little bit more, another week a little bit less, but he lived always from his art, never did anything else. From the moment he grabbed that bass, he never did anything else. And that's a beautiful thing.
Estoy concentrado tratando de transmitir mi pensamiento de corazón a la gente, que me entiendan. Ahí estoy yo, no sé dónde, en el mejor planeta del mundo soy yo, en ese momento. Es verdad. Eso es lo que yo creo que él va a entender. Así es. Como ustedes me ven así, efectivamente es verdad que fue así. El momento de inspiración, uno hace así, oiga, cuando uno hace así, usted sabe ya que...
Citizen All-Stars, John Santos, Alfredo de los Reyes. Good night. Thank you for coming.
Something new or reach beyond.
Oh my gosh.
When you want to peer inside.
It would seem almost impossible.
Or push the limit.
These divers are like astronauts.
When you want to find new frontiers.
I was truly astonished.
Nova. Only on PBS.
Yeah, I'm bringing home good news. Good news, got some good news for you.
American Masters is made possible by the support of the National Endowment for the Arts, because a great nation deserves great art. And by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Additional funding for American Masters provided by Rosalind P. Walter, Elizabeth Rosenthal in memory of Ralph W. Rosenthal, the Blanche and Irving Laurie Foundation, Jack Bruton, the Andre and Elizabeth Kertész Foundation, Michael and Helen Schaefer Foundation, and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you. To learn more about Cachao, visit pbs.org.